I have shared my slide. Is it visible to everyone?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes, sir. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. So last class we have derived an equation for the speed up that we obtain in a pipeline in the presence of a hazard, and what the equation that we have obtained is the speed up is equal to the pipeline depth divided by 1 plus pipeline stall cycle per instruction, where the pipeline depth is nothing but the number of stages in a pipeline. And this equation that we obtain, assuming that we are trying to reduce the number of the clock cycle per instruction. Also, there are two mechanisms where there are two ways we can see the pipeline, that it is reducing the number of the clock cycle per instruction, or it is reducing the number of reducing the clock cycle time. So it all depends upon what is the your base machine. If your base machine is taking the multiple number of clock cycle per instruction, then by pipelining we can reduce the number of number of clock cycle. And if your base machine, if you assume that it takes a the clock cycle time is much longer, then we can view it as a we can reduce the clock cycle time in by pipelining the machine. So one way we have looked at, let's look at the other way by reducing the clock cycle time. And when else you reduce the clock cycle time, then I should also obtain the same speed up equation. uh, uh, if we think of pipelining as improving the clock cycle time, then we assume that now we'll assume that by means of pipelining we're trying to improve the clock cycle time. The on pipeline has a large clock cycle time, and now we are trying to reduce the clock cycle time. So if you think the pipeline is improving the clock cycle time, then we assume that the CPI of the on pipeline processor, let's look at, we are reducing the clock cycle time, then we'll assume that the CPI of on pipeline processor and the ideal CPI of the pipeline processor is 1. So you always assume that the ideal CPI of a pipeline processor is 1. So the CPI of on pipeline machine, it takes only 1 clock cycle, but the clock cycle time is much larger, and we have to reduce this clock cycle time. So CPI of one pipeline machine is 1, and ideal CPI of the pipeline machine is 1, and the actual CPI is 1 plus the pipeline stall cycle per instruction. So this is what we obtain. Then what you are trying to reduce, we are trying to reduce the clock cycle time. Let's let's look at next. Yep. So let's look at let's find out what is the relation between the clock cycle time of a on pipeline machine and what the clock cycle time of a pipeline machine. And for that, we have to assume something, that we assume that the stages are perfectly balanced. If in cases where the pipe stages are perfectly balanced and there are no overhead. Now, when is the overhead in a pipeline? The overhead in a pipeline come from the pipeline reaches. So we assume also that there is also no overhead. Stages are perfectly balanced and there is no overhead. This is the, we need to simplify we need to simplify certain some of the assumption so that we can find out an equation. So these assumptions are being considered, that stages are perfectly balanced, there is no overhead, then the clock cycle of the pipeline processor is smaller than the clock cycle of a on pipeline processor by a factor equal to the pipeline depth. So simply we can say that if the stages are perfectly balanced and there are no overhead, then the clock cycle of a pipeline processor is equal to the clock cycle of on pipeline processor divided by the pipeline depth. So this is what we obtain now. The clock cycle of pipeline processor, assuming the stages are perfectly balanced and there is no overhead. So this is equal to the clock cycle of on pipeline processor divided by pipeline depth. Then I can write the pipeline depth is equal to the clock cycle of on pipeline divided by the clock cycle of the pipeline. So let's substitute this one in the previous equation. So the previous equation that we obtained is the 1 plus 1 divided by 1 plus pipeline stall cycle per instruction into the clock cycle of on pipeline machine divided by the clock cycle of pipeline machine, and this what we obtained, this part of this equation we obtained, this is nothing but the pipeline depth. So again we obtained the speed up is equal to the pipeline depth divided by 1 plus pipeline stall cycle per the instruction. So whether you reduce the number of clock cycle, or you are reducing the clock cycle time in a pipeline machine, the speed up that you obtain from pipelining is equal to the pipeline depth divided by 1 plus pipeline stall cycle per instruction. Now if this part is 0, no stall is going to take place. So if the pipeline stall cycle per instruction is 0, then the speed up is equal to the pipeline the depth. That is what we also obtain, what we have also discussed in one lecture, that the ideal speed up in a pipeline is equal to that of the pipeline depth. Now let's look at the performance issues due to the pipeline stalls. Let's discuss the three hazards. We discuss what is the structural hazard, what is the data hazard, and what is the control hazard. So let's discuss these hazards in detail. Now, structural hazard occurs because some combination of the instruction cannot be accommodated because of the resource conflict. That means this structural hazard arises only because there is a conflict in the resources in executing the two instructions. When you overlap the two instructions, when you overlap the execution of the instruction, two instructions may require a resource at the same clock cycle, and there are no enough resources available. Then we say a structural hazard take place because all combinations of the instruction in that the clock cycle, the resources cannot be accommodated to all combinations of instruction in that particular cycle. It's usually because some functional unit is not fully pipelined. So because some functional units are not pipelined, as a result of which two instructions using it cannot proceed at the rate of 1 per cycle. So if two instructions are using the same functional unit, and if the functional unit is not pipelined, then two of them cannot share the same functional unit in a single clock cycle. Now if it is a pipeline, then that functional unit, again if it is a pipeline, then there will be different stages of execution of that functional unit, then possibly we can also support it. Second reason of the resource conflict is that some resources has not been replicated enough, whether the functional units are not fully pipelined or the resources are not replicated enough. That means you do there are no enough duplicated resources available to share different combinations of the instruction at the same time. For example, that we had a one register file write port. Suppose there is only one write port and two instructions want to write at the same time. Now when you have two instructions to write at the same time, then and only one write port, two instructions cannot write at the same clock cycle. Let's look at, we had a unified the cache memory. Suppose we had a combined instruction cache and we have a data cache. So that's called the unified cache. When the cache was first designed, it was a unified cache. Both the instructions and data are there in the same cache. Now let's look at when you're fetching an instruction and when you're fetching an operand. If you look at in your 5-stage pipeline, in the clock cycle, in the instruction fetch stage, you fetch instruction, and the instruction decode stage, you fetch the you read the register, you read the memory, or you read the register. And if you look at, if you are fetching an operand in the memory stage, there will be a possibility of two instructions. one fetching the operand, and operands are there in the register. Now you fetch instructions, the instruction has to be fetched from the memory, and you fetch an operand, the operand has to be fetched from the memory. So there will be a some instruction trying to read the memory to fetch the operand, and some memory is access to fetch the instruction. So there is a resource conflict now. So if there is a conflict in the resource takes place, then the pipeline has to stall one of the instruction until the required the resources is available. So if a conflict takes place, then two instruction cannot proceed at in the same clock cycle. So one of the instruction has to be stalled, and the instruction which is mm, at the beginning of the pipeline needs to be stalled, and the instruction which is much deeper into the pipeline is allowed to proceed in the execution. And this stall is represented by means of a bubble in the pipeline diagram. So let's take the hazard case, and let's take the clock cycle 4. Now in the clock cycle 4, the load instructions is reading the memory. Load is there are two instructions which refer to the memory in a register architecture. One is the load, and the other one is the store instruction. So load is reading the memory, and store is going to write the memory. So both the load and stores refer to the memory. So here it reads from the memory, so the memory is being read. Now let's look at the instruction 3. Here also the memory is read, and this instruction 3 is reading the memory to fetch the instruction, and in clock cycle 4, and load instruction is reading the memory to fetch the operand. So there is a resource conflict, and the resource conflict is going to take place because we had only one memory port. There is only one memory where both the instructions and the operand are stored. So a resource conflict occur. So when when such a conflict occur, then one of the instruction has to be stalled. Now let's look at which instruction now to be stalled, whether the load is to be stalled or the instruction 3 is to be stalled. Now if you stall that means if you stall a instructions, that instruction is not going to proceed to the next clock cycle in the next stage in the next clock cycle. So here if you stall the load instruction, then the load instruction is stalled, then the load instruction cannot go to the register stage in the clock cycle 5. Now if once the load instructions is stalled, then all the subsequent instruction has to be stalled. Instruction 1, instruction, because they also cannot proceed to the next stage of the pipeline because this stage is not complete. So the next instruction cannot go to the memory stage until the previous instruction. That instruction 1 cannot go to the memory stage until the load instruction completes the memory stage. So this instruction 1 has to be stalled. So the instruction which are nearer to the pipeline, if you look at the instruction 3 is at the near in the pipeline. Near means it's not much deeper into the pipeline. This is my 5-stage pipeline. So this is at the beginning of the instruction phase stage. And if you look at this instruction in the 4th stage of the pipeline. So it is much deeper in the pipeline. The load instruction is in much deeper in the pipeline. So the instruction which are nearer to the pipeline, you stall this instruction and all the subsequent instruction after that. So you stall instruction 3 and all the instructions after instruction 3. So instruction 4 can also be the stall and allow the other instructions to proceed. So you allow the load instruction to proceed, and the stall instruction 3 is stall until the resources is available. Now if you stall the load instruction, if you stall the instruction 3, the load instruction proceeds to the execution, and in the next clock cycle the memory is available and the instruction can fetch and start executing. So this is a pipeline diagram, and usually you will see this is my pipeline diagram. So this says this is in the clock cycle 4. the two instructions, instruction I plus 3 is also require the memory. So you install instruction I plus 3. So instruction I plus 3 is installed. So this is my instruction I. So this is instruction I plus 3. It is installed for 1 clock cycle. And you look at the next instruction I plus 4, which was supposed to begin its execution in clock cycle 5. So it start begin execution in clock cycle 6. Now this instruction 3 is supposed to complete in the clock cycle 8. In the 8th clock cycle, now it will be completing in the 9th clock cycle. So a 1 clock cycle penalty, 1 clock cycle is lost as a result of the stall, and all the subsequent instructions is also stalled completed in the next clock cycle. Now let's take an example and see what penalty we are going to pay as a result of the structural hazards. Let's take a instruction where 40% of the instructions refer to the data. 40% of instructions are data reference. The ideal CPI of on-pipeline processor ignoring the structural hazard is 1. So we are not looking at a structural and on-pipeline machine. In fact, in an on-pipeline machine, since there is only one instructions, and so it will be using all the resources available. So hardly there will be any structural hazard in an on-pipeline machine. So the ideal CPI of a on-pipeline processor ignoring the structural hazard is 1, assuming that the processor with structural hazard has a clock rate that is 1.05 times higher than the clock rate of the processor without the hazard. So we now have a two processor. One with one have a higher clock rate, and the clock rate is 1.05 times higher than the clock rate of the clock rate of on pipeline processor. Assuming that the processor with structural hazard has a clock rate of 1.05 times higher than the clock rate of the processor without structural hazard, disregarding any performance losses, is the pipeline with or without structural hazard is faster. So let's compute that the pipelining with or without the structural hazard is faster, and by how much it's faster. So there is a slightly one mistake is here. It should have been a on pipeline processor. It's not a on pipeline processor. So we had a two pipeline processor, because the last questions is asking about the pipeline processor. So there are the ideal CPI of a pipeline processor ignoring structural hazard is 1, and the structural hazard the processor with structural hazard has a higher clock rate of 1.05 times, and without any performance losses, which one is faster, whether the processor with the structural hazard or a pipeline with a structural hazard or a pipeline without a structural hazard? If it is faster, then by how much it is faster? Can you just try to solve this problem?
So without the structural hazard is faster.
But how much time?
Sir, by 1.3 factor.
Right, it's a factor of 1.3. It is faster. Correct. So let's look at. So this is the standard equation, that the average instruction time is equal to the CPI into the clock cycle time. So now we had a two processor. One is ideal processor that does not have a hazard. The other one is a processor with a hazard. But the average instruction time, the equation is same, that it is the clock cycle per instruction in the clock cycle time. So the average time to execute the instruction in an ideal processor where the hazard is not going to take place, which is equal to CPI is 1 into the clock cycle time ideal. We do not know what is the clock cycle ideal clock cycle time. What do we know? There is a relationship of 1.05 times. That is the relation it has, that the clock rate of the on pipeline pipeline processor with hazard is 1.05 times than that of the pipeline processor without hazard. So, and the average instruction time of the processor with hazard, I think something is left out. There should be, it should have been CPI into the clock cycle time divided by 1.05. So you look at the clock cycle time and the clock rate are inversely proportional. So you can find out that relation. So it is the CPI is 1 plus 0.4 into 1 into the clock cycle time ideal by 1.5, and this comes out to be 1.3 into the clock cycle time of the ideal. Now the next question is, then why sometimes the architect allow the structural hazard to take place. Sometimes the architecture allowed the structural hazard to take place just to reduce the cost. Now, what is the reason for the structural hazard? There are two reasons for the structural hazard. One, the resources are not replicated enough. That means duplicated resources are not there. The second, the functional units are not fully pipelined. Look at, if you are duplicating the resources, that means same resources is to be replicated more than one resources of the same time, so will add up to the cost. Then if you make it the pipeline the functional unit fully pipeline, then we have to put more number of gates or more number of resources to use resources on the data path. So that also adds up adds also the cost to it. So one of the reason why they allow the structural hazard to take place, provided the structural hazards are rare. But if the structural hazards are very frequent, then we have to figure out a mechanism to overcome the structural hazards. Otherwise, you have to pay a large penalty when a structural hazard is going to take place. So this says if the structural hazard are rare, so it may not be worth of avoiding the cost. So if you look at the hazards are structural hazards are rare, then you allow the structural hazard to take place. Otherwise, you have to find out a mechanism to overcome the structural hazards. Now let's look at the data hazard. The data hazard occurs when the pipeline changes the order of read and write access to the operand, so that the orders differ from the orders seen by sequentially executing instruction on a on pipeline processor. Now let's look at what happens in on pipeline processor. First, a instruction executes. Only after a instruction executes, the successor of that instruction is executed. So the order of read and write is not going to change in a sequential machine, but in sequential execution. But in a pipeline execution, if the instructions are overlapped, then the order of read and write is going to change. Now let's look at where our write take place. Our write to a register takes place in the write back stage. And when we read the register in the instruction decode stage. So a instruction is is writing to the register or updating the result of its execution in the write back stage, whereas a instruction reading its operand in the instruction decode stage. So if you look at the stages wise, the read and write access of the operand are going to differ. As a result of this, there is a possibility of different order in which the read and write is going to take place, as a result of which the data hazard is going to take place. Now let's take an example. This is an add instructions, and I said that if it is suffix and prefix is D, so it is a 64-bit operation. So it's add. It adds to register R2. It add to register R2 and R3, and write to the register R1. Now Let's look at the next 4 instructions. The subtract instructions depends on the result of the add instruction. It's reading the register R1. Add instruction is writing to the register R1. So there is a read and write. Add instruction is also reading the content of the register R1, which is to be written by the add instruction. So and in the and also depends on the add instruction, or also needs R1. So or also depends on the add instruction. XOR also reads R1. So XOR also depends on the OR instruction. Now, uh, now let's look at the add instructions. Writes the value of updates the value of R1 in the write back stage. So R1 is updated in the write back stage. Subtract instructions reads the value of R1. This is in the instruction decode stage. So one is writing the value of R1 in the write back stage, and subtract instruction is reading the value of R1 in the instruction decode stage. So the order of read and write is changed, as a result of which a data hazard is going to take place. Uh, Now, unless some mechanisms are built in, or unless you take a precaution, so what the R1 is going to read? R1 is going to read a value, and uh, uh, that value that is going to read. So what is the value will be read by the R1? You may think that the value of the R1 will read a value maybe executed by some instructions before the add. There may be some instruction before the add instruction which might have computed the value of R1, and that R1 value the subtract instruction is going to read. But what is the value of R1? The subtract instruction is supposed to read it. The subtract instruction is supposed to read the value of R1 produced by the add instruction. As a result of overlapping, the read and write access is changed, and this change we call it the data hazard. Now let's look at uh, what value the R1 may going to get, and this value that R1 is going to read in the instruction discard stage is not even a deterministic value. You can say one can say that by looking at that it will read some value by executed by some instruction. If there are no instruction which is updated, no instruction prior to this add instruction and update value of R1, then it will read some value which is there in the register. It may be a garbage value. And now let's take another case. Suppose this is add instruction executing. Add instruction is executing, and an interrupt occurs. Suppose interrupt occurs. Let's say that interrupt has occurred. Now, let's say if an interrupt has occurred, then what is the value of R1 the subtract instruction is going to read? Suppose interrupt occurs at there says how the interrupt is the process. The interrupt is processed, but if an interrupt occurs, the instruction which is in currently execution, the add instruction, this we allow this instruction, the interrupt will occur between add and this subtract instruction. So allow the add instruction to complete. So when the add instruction completes, so what is it will update the value of the register R1. Then it will process the interrupt. After processing the interrupt, it will start executing this subtract instruction. This is how the interrupt will be processed. Now what will the value of R1 will be read here after the interrupt? The value of R1 is the value that updated by the add instruction. So it's going to read the correct value. So the value that R1 is going to read is not even a deterministic value, either a garbage value or some value that some prior instruction before the add instruction is written to R1, or the value that value that is updated by the add instruction. So it's not even a deterministic one. Now but we want if the R1 if the subtract instruction reads a value which is not written by the add instruction, then your result will be incorrect. Now if you'll so let's look at this execution. Let's look at how this is being executed. So this is add instructions. Add instruction completes in the clock cycle 5. Subtract instructions read in clock cycle the value of R1 in clock cycle needs the value of R1 in clock cycle 3, and instruction needs the value of R1 in clock cycle 4, or instruction needs the value of R1 in clock cycle 5. So there is no problem with the or instruction because registers are read and written in half of the clock cycle. First it is read, so R1 can be updated in first half of the clock cycle, so or instruction can read in the second half. So there is no problem to the or instruction. XOR instructions can read the register file in clock cycle file. The register is updated, so it can read. So there is a problem with the two instructions, the subtract instruction and add instruction. The AND instruction, subtract and one need in the clock cycle 3, the other one in the clock cycle 4, and the result is produced in the clock cycle 5. So there is a problem here. Now how to overcome this problem? And when we execute the instructions, such type of dependency is always be there, and there must be a mechanism to handle such type of dependency. And moment there is a dependency, then if you stall the pipeline, then the performance of the pipeline will keep on degrading. It will degrade the performance. So all the hazard has to be the handle. Let's look at how this particular hazard or a data hazard can handle. Let's analyze this one. The subtract instructions reads the value of R1 in the clock cycle 3. So in this clock cycle it reads this clock cycle 3 it reads the value of R1, but it actually needs the value of R1 in clock cycle 4 when it executing. So here only it needs the value of R1. So in clock cycle 3. So in clock cycle 4 actually it needs, but in clock cycle at the end of the clock cycle 3, the value of R1 is already produced. The value of R1 is already computed at the end of the clock cycle 3. The only thing, it is not written to the register file. The register R1 is not updated, but it is computed and it is already written in this pipeline register. So this pipeline register between in execution stage and the memory stage is already there. And subtract instructions need the value of R1 only in the clock cycle 4. So which is already the value of R1 is already available in the clock cycle 3. So what it can be done from this pipeline register, you can send it to the input of the ALU. So I can directly or the mechanism can be built in where it can be directly sent. So this can be done, and so hazard can be added now. Let's look at the AND instruction. The AND instructions is read in clock cycle 4, but it needs in clock cycle 5. So here it needs R1. But where is R1 now? The R1, this is the pipeline register. At the end of the clock cycle 4, the content of the pipeline register has moved from here to here. So at the end of the clock cycle 4, the pipeline register between the memory and write back stage actually holds the value of R1. The value of R1 is hold here, or you can say the value of R1 is hold here. So you can pass from this pipeline register to the input of the ALU. Now this mechanism is called a byte forwarding, bypassing, or it's also known as short circuiting. So the data hazard can be minimized, and in many of the case data hazard can also be prevented by means of the forwarding mechanism. The forwarding is also known as bypassing, or it's also known as short circuiting. And the forwarding works as follows. Actually, I've already explained how it works. So what he says, the ALU result from both the pipeline registers. These are my two pipeline registers, execution stage, memory stage, or the memory stage and write back pipeline register is always fed back to the input of the ALU. So the ALU it not only gets it input from the register file that is read, but the input also comes from two other sources. One from the execution memory stage pipeline register back to the input ALU, and from the memory and write back stage back to the input ALU. So we had more than one input, more than one source to the one of the ALU input. So when you have a more than one source to the ALU input, so definitely you need a multiplexer, and using that multiplexer you have to select one of the input, whether the input is to be read from the register file, or the input to the ALU will come from the execution memory stage, or the input should come from the memory and write back stage. So you need a multiplexer to select depending upon from where the input. So the logic has to be developed, or logic has to be built in to read the input from the correct source. The from how to then how to determine the correct source? If the forwarding hardware, so there is a hardware mechanism built into the pipeline that detects the if the forwarding hardware detects that the previous ALU operation has written the register corresponding to the source of the current ALU operation, the control logic selects the forwarded result is the ALU input rather than the value read from the register file. So what he says that if you look at the source to the ALU are there are different source to the ALU. So the hardware forwarding logic, if it detects that the uh, the source of the current instruction will be from a previous instruction, then it will the hardware forwarding logic will select uh, uh, the ALU output rather than from the register file. So this is diagrammatically it is shown here that this hardware logic detects that this instruction will read the source. Here the source is R1, and the source R1, which is the destination of the previous instruction, add instruction. So it is one instruction away in the pipeline. This is immediate predecessor. Subtract, it checks whether the source is the destination of the previous instruction. Source of this instruction is the destination of the previous instruction. Hello? Hello? So the source of the current instruction is the result of the previous or destination of the previous instruction. So the forwarding logic, hardware forwarding logic detects this, and it will not read it from the register file, rather it will read it from the ALU output. So this is the ALU output, and it forwards here. So it reads the value. Now let's look at the AND instruction. Now AND instruction, here is the source. Source is here, and if you look at it's one of these previous instructions. That means two instruction away. The two instruction away. This is add instruction reading the source. So again, the forwarding logic, it detects that it should get it from the ALU output rather than the source. So it gets from the ALU output. So from here it transferred here. So what does the forwarding logic detect? The forwarding logic detects whether the source is the source register is the destination of two immediately the preceding instruction, and if it is the destination of the two immediately preceding instruction, then the hardware logic detects the suitable forwarding select a suitable forwarding logic to select from the pipeline register. In forwarding, the result is passed directly to the functional units that request. So here, if you look at
that the ALU is the functional unit, and the result is directly passed to this functional unit. So here also A is the functional unit, the result is directly passed to the functional unit that needing the particular result. A result is forwarded from the pipeline register corresponding to the output of one unit to the input of another, rather than just from the result of the unit to the input of the same unit. What is it that you pass from the output, it is passed from the output from here to the input of the ALU, and from here again to the input of the ALU, and all this goes through a MUX. There is a MUX, and the MUX will select either from the register or from the two pipeline register. Now let's take one more instruction. Let's take one or two instructions and see. Let's take this one. This is a add instruction. Adds R2 plus R3 and stores the result in R1, and followed by there is two instructions, load and the store, and the load and store both refer to the memory. Let's look at what the load is doing. Load, it reads a memory location, and how does it compute the effective address? The effective address is the content of the register R1 plus the offset 0. R1 plus 0 is become the effective address, and the load where the R1 is produced. Let's look at, there is a dependency between these two instructions, load and add. So there is a data dependency. Now let's look at store instruction. What does the store instruction does? Stores right to the memory. So this is the register, source register, and the effective address is R1 plus 12. So again, the store is dependent add. Now let's look at the load instruction is writing to the register R4. Store instruction is also reading from the register R4. Look at load and store. The store is read the register R4, and the reading is takes place in the instruction decode stage. Load instructions write to the register R4, and that takes place in the write back stage. Writing to the register takes place in the write back stage. Now let's try to execute this instruction in our 5-stage pipeline and see whether it is possible to prevent the hazard by means of forwarding. Let's look at. This is my add instructions. So the add instructions is computed. The result is available at the end of the clock cycle 4 in this pipeline register. Let's look at the load instruction. Now the load instructions needs to compute the effective address in the clock cycle 4. So it needs the value of R1, and the value of R1 is already in the pipeline register and is forwarded. So forwarding logic, with the help of forwarding logic, it can go to the one of the input of the ALU, and the offset is already 0. Sign extended object is already done in the instruction decode stage. So it adds of this one, it will compute the effective address. So here in clock cycle 4, the effective address is computed, and in the clock cycle 5, the memory is read. The memory is read, and the result of that memory is available in that on this pipeline register, and it will be written back. It will be written the clock cycle 6. Let's look at the stored instruction. The store instructions has read the register R4, but if you look at load and the load and the store, there is a dependency. There is a data dependency between the load and store instructions, but it has read, and that what it has read is something which are there in the register R4, and that is also not a deterministic one. So let's look at. So again, it will compute the effective address. So it will compute the effective address in clock cycle 5. So it needs the value of R4. It needs the value of R1. So it can be transferred from the pipeline register to one of the input. Sign of this is the offset is sign extended. So you do all this operation in clock cycle 5 to compute the effective address. Now it will write to the memory. So store instruction will write to the memory, and this write will take place in the clock cycle 6. But if you look at the value of register R4 is already available at the end of the clock cycle 5. So from this pipeline register, it can be directly transferred to the input of the functional unit that is required. So this operation can be done, and in clock cycle 6, the register R4 can be updated. So hazard is overcome by means of the forwarding. Now let's take one more example and see this one. Let's take this example. Here there is a load instruction, and write to the register R1, subtract instruction, AND instruction, and OR instruction. All these three instructions reads the value of the register R1, which is written by the load instruction. Let's try to execute this instruction and see whether it is possible to possible to overcome the hazards, data hazard, by means of forwarding. Let's take this. Let's execute this one in our 5-stage pipeline. Let's look at load. Load reads from the memory locations. So the result of this memory operation is available at the end of the clock cycle 4. In clock cycle 4, it reads. So at the end of the clock cycle 4, it's available. Let's look at subtract instruction. Subtract instructions needs the value of R1 at the beginning of the clock cycle 3. AND instructions needs the value of R1 at the beginning of the clock cycle 5, and OR instruction needs the value of R1 in at the second half of the clock cycle 5. Now let's look at by means of forwarding. Can it be possible? Let's look at the subtracting. The value of R1 will be produced only at the end of the clock cycle 4, and the value of R1 is needed by subtract instruction at the beginning of the clock cycle 5, at the beginning of the clock cycle 4. So it is not possible to do a backward forwarding. The backward forwarding is not possible. Time moves in the forward direction. Is not possible for a backward forwarding. So by means of forwarding, this is not possible. By data forwarding, it's not possible to send the data from the load to subtract and avoid a stall. Now let's look at add instruction. The add instruction needs at the clock cycle at the beginning of the clock cycle 5, and the value of R1 is already available in the pipeline register at the clock cycle 4. So you can do a forwarding, so you can avoid. And subtract the AND instructions are done. The OR instructions, it's always possible. There's no need, so it can reach at the clock cycle the 5. So what we can conclude, that by means of forwarding, it's not always possible to eliminate a stall, and it's not always possible to eliminate a stall, but there must be some mechanism to detect an hazard. And if it is not possible to avoid the stall by means of forwarding, then it must introduce a stall in the pipeline. The load instructions in the previous example that we said, it says that if you had a load instructions, and if you are immediately using the result of the load instructions, then a stall will always required. So it says if a load instruction and immediately followed by any instruction that uses the result of the load instruction, then there will be a stall. So here there is a load instruction, and immediately following the load instruction there is a subtract instruction which uses the result of the load instruction, as a result of which there has to be a stall between the load and the subtract instruction. The load instruction has a latency or a delay that cannot be eliminated by means of forwarding. And since it's not possible to eliminate by means of forwarding, so you need to add an hardware and this hardware is called the pipeline interlock. This hardware this will preserve the correct execution pattern. Now, if in the previous example, if the subtract instruction will proceed in the execution, then the value of the R1 will be not from the load instruction, but some value which is contained in the register R1. So this pipeline interlock, it will preserve the correct execution pattern. How does it preserve the correct execution pattern? That the pipeline interlock detects a hazard. First, it will detect a hazard and it will stall the pipeline until the hazard is clear. And once the hazard is, what it does, it detects a hazard and stall the pipeline. When moment it stall the pipeline, it allows the previously instruction to complete in execution and stall all the instructions for which a risk conflict has been taken place. In previous case, it was a subtract instructions, so it will stall the subtract instruction and all the instructions following the subtract instruction and allow the instructions before the subtract instruction to continue its execution so that the hazard will get clear. Now, once a hazard takes place, then the performance of the pipeline degrades. The CPI of the stall instruction increases by the length of the stall. In the previous case, the stall was for 1 cycle, so the CPI increases by 1 cycle. If the stall will be 2 cycles, then CPI will increases by 2 cycles. So this is the execution of the previously instruction. This is the load, subtract and OR. Now, if I'll execute these instructions, so this will be the normal pattern of execution. In the clock cycle 4, it will read the memory and subtract instruction needs the value of R1 in clock cycle 4. So 1 is produced at the beginning of the clock. So the R1 will produce only at the end of the clock cycle 4, but the subtract instruction needs the value at the clock cycle at the beginning of the clock cycle 4. So this subtract instruction need to be stalled. So the pipeline interlock will detect and it will stall the subtract instruction. So if you look at the same instruction executed the below figure, so it is stalled the pipeline. So it has stalled the pipeline and the pipeline is stalled for 1 cycle. Now, why it is for 1 cycle? Now let's look at in the clock cycle 5. So the result of the load is available in the pipeline register. This place is already available between the memory and the write back pipeline register is available. So from this pipeline register, it can be sent to the input of the ALU. So 1 clock cycle stall is required. So once the instruction is stalled, then all the subsequent instruction is also stalled for 1 cycle. So an instruction which was in the instruction phase stage, so it will remain stalled, but it will remain in the instruction phase stage. It will not go to the execution stage. And OR instructions which was supposed to OR instruction which was supposed to be the instruction is to be fetched in the clock cycle 4. So no instruction will be fetched from the clock cycle 4. So you look at all the subsequent instructions are stalled, and this stall is for 1 clock cycle. So what we have seen that if we have a load instructions and if you are immediately using the result of the load instruction, then you pay a penalty, and the amount of penalty that you pay is the number of clock cycle until the hazard is clear. In the present example, it will for 1 clock cycle stall. After 1 clock cycle, the hazard will be cleared. So in the next class, we will discuss one more hazard, that's called the branch hazard or the control hazard. So it is time to you can leave the team and join for the next class.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes. Yes.
Sir, in today's class, when you were talking, yes, sir. Sir, in today's class, when you were talking about forwarding, you told something like the logic will be means the hardware will decide whether the operands to be used by current instruction in ALU, if it is the destination of last instruction, is it by it will check in last two instructions or it is dynamic?
It will check last. Actually, we are discussing only the data part, not on the control part. At one, we'll discuss only at a one place, because designing the control part is a very complex process. We'll design only at one place how the control signals are generated. Now, if you make the entire analysis, it requires only two. The instruction need to check only the previous two instruction. So it simply checks the
Yes,
previous two instruction only. That the control logic has to built into it, because this pipeline that we are discussing here is required to check only the two instruction, the previous two instruction. So the control has to be designed accordingly.
sir. Does it depend or the program we are currently working in?
Which one?
Sir, means you told depends on last two instructions. Does it depends on the
It's not on the
implementation of the
program.
hardware, or it depends on?
No, it's not depend on the program. Program is independent. Program is independent. The structure of the pipeline is such that the pipeline is designed. Look at, we had a 5-stage pipeline: fetch, decode, execution, memory, write back. This pipeline register. Now, however, it will be the dependency. Now, if you analyze the dependency, a instruction can depend only on the previous two instruction for the hazard. Now, if you take any instructions, the dependency can remain on the previous two instructions. Now, if you go back to my last slide, the instruction, there are 4 instructions depending on the previous instruction. If you go back, let me like to go back. Now let's look at this instruction. Yes, still now this slide is available, so let me make it a slide. So let's look at this. How many instructions are there? There are 5 instructions, and subtract, and, or, and XOR, all of them are depending on the add instruction. Now, if we'll analyze all these, then only 2. If you look at here, by means of data forwarding, all can be eliminated, right? And this cannot be eliminated only on the certain. That means I need to check only the previous 2 instructions because of my pipeline structure, not on the program. It's on the pipeline structure.